So welcome to our today's class that would be based on gender and thematics of comparative literature. And in our previous class, we have learned that towards the end of the 20th century, comparative literature has got several sub-genres or subsection. In this regard, the idea came into discussion that in comparative literature, theme of a text might be compared. And that idea is called thematology. In this regard, the two persons, we have talked it earlier, that Koleb and Noax, they said that literature will be literary history as a great unified cultural enterprise. However, Rene Wellek said that literature will be ennobling the human perspectives. So, literature can be viewed with the combination of several literary theories like post-colonial theories, gender studies, and others. So this class will be on that gender issues and the post-colonial theories. And we talked about these persons and especially we also talked about the formalist viewpoint of comparative literature, that is a French school that suggested that importance of text historical and biographical context will be eliminated. However, what is within the text, that will be evaluated. And also we have discussed that at present comparative literature can be viewed such as post-colonial studies or gender studies. So our concern today that comparative literature will be turning towards gender studies. And for this reason, the title suggests that thematics and the gender issues. And in this regard, this person, Prewar, he suggests several ideas of comparative literature. And we talked about these ideas in our previous class, but I want to put emphasis regarding the gender studies about the fifth one, that is the named personage. That means in literature, we see several female characters, and how these female characters have been evaluated by several writers in several times. That is our issues. And in this regard, Elaine Showalter, the American literary critic, she has come up with the idea of gynotext. That means the literary piece written by the female writers. So when we had been discussing about the travel writing, that means when a writing should be written by the female writers, that would have a different explanation. And alternatively, when a male writer will be writing a literary piece, that will have another perspectives. In the same way, if we see the female characters in literature, they have been written by several writers of several times. So the female characters have been judged by several perspectives. And in this regard, we had also talked about the archetype. That means female characters have been criticized either positively, just like an angel, or they have been criticized either negatively, just like a monster. That was the two views. And these two views came in literature through the several archetype, that means the preconceived ideas of female, and how we have got such kind of preconceived ideas about female character. In this regard, we have to go back to some literary or the historic archetype of female personalities through religion, through folk tales, through legend, and others. And in this regard, Elaine Showalter, she talked about the Guinevere text. Okay, so we will be discussing this point in this class now. And we talked about two characters, especially Clytemnestra, we know. And the Clytemnestra was the wife of Agamemnon. Agamemnon and Menelaus went to fight in Troy. At that time, when Agamemnon returned, Agamemnon was killed by Clytemnestra. This is the fact. But the story is that Agamemnon himself killed Clytemnestra's daughter, and Agamemnon and Clytemnestra's daughter Iphigenia, to pacify a god. So whenever Agamemnon killed their daughter, that is been criticized in a way, but whenever Clytemnestra killed Agamemnon, that is been criticized very negatively. However, one text, that is Erin Manolevsky's version, this version put Clytemnestra in a positive view. Okay, that means he put Clytemnestra as a woman betrayed by her husband Agamemnon into handing over her beloved daughter Iphigenia, supposed to be married but actually to be sacrificed. When Iphigenia was taken by Agamemnon, it was told that Iphigenia will be married to a prince, but that was false. Actually, Iphigenia was sacrificed to pacify the anger of a god. This is the scenario. So Clytemnestra was written by several writers, and some writers praises, most of the writers criticizes Clytemnestra negatively, and a few writers praises Clytemnestra in some portion. And same thing happened about Medea. Also, we have talked about Medea. Okay, so how these characters, that is, this is the mythological character Medea, and Medea is the daughter of a king Arteus of Colonius and niece of Circe and granddaughter of the sun god Helios. So Medea was also been criticized negatively by the writers for her killing of her own sons. Actually, Medea did so to avenge to her husband, to take revenge on her husband. Medea killed her children. So this is the scenario. So how such kind of position of women in literature has been attributed? And we have been discussed about this. Okay, so our concern is that how female characters, that means the named personage of literature, has been treated by several writers. That is our concern, and that is a subsection of comparative literature that is related to thematology. That means comparative literature will be discussing and criticizing the theme of literature. And here, for the case of named personages, that means the female characters in literature, such kind of archetype, female characters, how did the female character achieve such kind of identification, either positive or negative identification? Here we see some archetype tradition. That is, as you see on the slide, Hellenic tradition of archetype, female archetype from Hellenic tradition, another Christian tradition, another folk tales, and from fairy tales. So these are the archetype that um, presupposed the idea about female character. That that means Hellenic archetype, Christian archetype, folktale archetype, legendary archetype inspired or gave the writer some preconceived idea. And for this reason, the female characters in literature has been treated in such a way, either positively or negatively. Let's have a look to the tradition. So in this regard, we see several female characters, that is shifting through the qualities of creative and scholarly work by women on figures from post 16th century literary history, from ancient mythology, from folklores, fairy tale, from the Judo-Christian tradition. Generally, it is interesting to observe an apparent lack of interest in the tradition of Arthurian literature. The title is suggests that the Guinevere, we haven't talked about Guinevere. Guinevere is a Arthurian queen. So we will be talking later on about Guinevere. And of course, um, um, interest in Arthurian romance is still so strong, generally in the Anglo-Saxon world, that there are continuous reprints of established text, rewriting in novel, cinematic form of various episodes relating to Arthurian materials, and international societies, journals, and convention devoted to studying the history and the development of those materials. That means the Arthurian legend. But the complex, ambiguous figure of characters such as Mortgage, Nimue, Isolde, or Guinevere have not yet received much attention from feminist writers or critics, such as characters such as Jane Eyre, Electra, Judith, and Salome. So we see the Arthurian characters, female character. At the same time, we see several Victorian characters, that is Jane Eyre, Electra, Judith, and Salome. So here, Arthurian legendary female characters have been written by several novelists, have been written in several cinematography and others, but they are not treated equally like Jane Eyre, Electra, Judith, and Salome. Susan Bassett, she comes up with the idea that such kind of named personage in literature occurs for the cause of some preconceived idea that we have got from the female archetypes, legendary female archetypes, the female archetypes of Hellenic tradition. So we will be discussing that. What is the Hellenic tradition of female archetypes? In this regard, there are three groups. The first group belongs to uh, virgin goddesses. They are Artemis, Athena, and Hestia. They are the virgin goddess and represent the independent, self-sufficient quality in women. All are the female, these are the goddess. So the first group, this group belong to the virgin goddess. We are discussing about the Hellenic tradition of the female archetype. And here, emotional attachment didn't divert them from what they considered important. So the virgin goddesses, Artemis, Athena, and Hestia, they are not inspired by some emotional feeling or some other thing. So these goddesses have been praised highly in literature. The second group, second group, that is come forward, that is the vulnerable goddess. And this group includes Hera, Demeter, and Persephone. They are the relationship-oriented goddess archetype whose identities and well-being depends on having a significant relationship. They express women needs for affiliation and bonding. So this group needs for women relationship and bonding, their wife, their mother, and their daughter as well. This second group. And the final group is the transformative goddess and generated love and beauty, that is Aphrodite. Erotic attraction, sensuality, sexuality, and new life. So this is the Hellenic tradition of female archetype we have got. Apart from this, we have another archetype, that is the Christian tradition of female archetype. In this regard, the name comes first, that is the Virgin Mary. Virgin Mary is wife of Joseph and mother of Jesus. And according to the canonical gospel and the Quran, and the gospel of Matthew and Luke in the New Testament, and the Quran describe Mary as a virgin. In Matthew and the Luke, she is betrothed to Joseph. So this is the Christian tradition of female archetype. Another Christian tradition of female archetype, we have got Mary Magdala. This character as you see. So was a woman who, according to the four canonical gospel, traveled with Jesus as one of his followers and was a witness of his crucifixion and its aftermath. So this is the Christian tradition of female archetype. And again, we see in Arthurian women archetype, that is queens, ladies, saint. In Arthurian legend, we see some archetype of female character that they had played. That means female characters in Arthurian time, they played the role of queens, ladies, and saint. And actually incorporate feminist issues by revisioning the legend traditional symbol of power. Women have been attributed to symbol of power, definition of heroism that we see, that means the queen, and binary oppositions as well, that is between good and evil. So in Arthurian legend, we see female characters had played important role regarding heroism and the symbol of power as well. In this regard, we see that Morgage, the queen of Orkney, today best known for Morgase and also known as Morgase and the other spelling name of character. And so a character in later Arthurian tradition. So this is Morgage. And we see another character, and this is Nimue, or Lady of the Lake. Lady of the Lake is played a vital role in the Arthurian court. So it is so Lady of the Lake attributed to heroism in Arthurian legend. And another character we see Iseult. And Iseult is related to Tristan and Iseult legend. So there is a legend that is Tristan and Iseult. And the most important prominent is Iseult of Ireland, the wife of Mark of Cornwall. So in Iseult, you see several characters named Iseult in literature. And prominent one was this, that is the wife of Mark of Cornwall and the lover and later the wife of Tristan. Her mother, the Queen of Ireland, and is also named Iseult. So this is another legendary character. Actually, this is Tristan, also known as Tristram or Tristane, the similar names. He is the hero of the legend of Tristan and Iseult. And then comes the title figure, that is Guinevere. And Guinevere is the wife of the queen of King Arthur in the Arthurian legend. Guinevere has been portrayed as everything from a villainous and opportunistic traitor to a fatally flawed but noble and virtuous lady. So Guinevere has been attributed to heroism, as we have learned it earlier, that the Arthurian women has been treated highly as a symbol of heroism and power. So Guinevere is not an exception. However, Guinevere has also been criticized as a villainous and opportunistic female character of Arthurian legend. Why? So the history is concerned that is Guinevere was the wife of this King Arthur, and King Arthur was a legendary British leader. Actually, in the end of the 5th century or early in the 16th century, Arthurian legend Arthur had been fighting against the Saxon invaders, Anglo-Saxon. We have heard the name of Anglo-Saxon and the other invaders who came to invade England. Arthur went to fight against the Saxon invaders. At that time, Guinevere fall in love with King Arthur's very close knight and friend, Lancelot. So for this reason, Guinevere was criticized negatively, opportunistic, and also as a villainous character. And this legend was written by Sir Thomas Malory, the British writer, and he wrote that the English writer, she author of and compiler of Lee Morty de Arthur, the classic English language chronicle of the Arthurian legend, published by William Caxton in 1486. So Malory's identity has been confirmed, and by the likeliest candidate is Sir Thomas Malory, is Newbold Revel in Warwickshire. So the Malory wrote Morty de Arthur. So the story, what I said to you, that means King Arthur was a noble king of Britain. He had been fighting against the Saxon invaders. At that time, his wife Guinevere fall in love with Lancelot. That means one of the important knight of Arthurian legend and the friend of King Arthur. So our title suggests that this Guinevere has been criticized by several writers in several ways. Guinevere is the Queen of Britain, wife of King Arthur and lover of Sir Lancelot in the Arthurian legend, best known in their standardized form from Sir Arthur Malory's Lee Morty de Arthur. So from the story. And Guinevere was a very beautiful and noble queen, but her life took a tragic turn when she fell in love with Lancelot, one of Arthur's bravest and the modest and most loyal knights. So Guinevere was criticized negatively. However, we see another female characters, that is Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre has a novel written by Charlotte Bronte, we know that. And the first American edition was published the following year by Harper and Brothers of Newark. So that is Jane Eyre. And also we see another characters, that is Electra, that is a mythological character. And Electra is also we see character in tragedies, Greek tragedies. She is the main character in true Greek tragedies, that is Electra by Sophocles. We have heard the name of Electra by the Greek dramatist Sophocles. He has written a drama named Electra. And Electra by Euripides, another Greek dramatist. Euripides has written this character, Electra. She is also the central figure in plays by Aeschylus, Alfieri, Voltaire, Hofmannsthal, and Eugene O'Neill. So Electra is a mythological character, and this character has been written by several Greek dramatists and also some other modern dramatists as well, like Eugene O'Neill. So Electra. Another character we see, that is the Judith. It is an ancient story, relates to Assyrian king Nebuchadnezzar sent his general Hophanes to besiege the Jewish city of Bethula. So, ancient story. Judith, described as a beautiful young widow, resolved to save her people by slaying Holofernes herself. So Judith take position in front in favor of her own people. And after reciting a long prayer to God, she dons her finest clothes in order to seduce him. That means the attacker. This is the story of Judith. Another character we see, female character, that is Salome. Salome, the daughter of the Herod II, and the Herodotus, granddaughter of the Herod the Great, is known for accounts in the New Testament where she appears as an unnamed daughter of Herodotus, and an account by Flavius Josephus where the daughter of Herodotus is named Salome. So this is another female character. So here we see the female character in drama, theater, and novel, and some other writings. Here, Morges, Nimue, otherwise known as Nimue, Isolde, and Guinevere recur in different ways. So we have mentioned already, we have noticed that this female character has been written by many writers through generally treated as negative archetypes. So you see the character, female character, they has been treated negatively. Margot's Queen of Orkney is a half-sister of Arthur, and in Mallory's version, among others, is depicted as having had an incestuous relationship with her brother, resulting the birth of Mordred, the man who will eventually bring about the ruin of the ideals of the Round Table of Arthurian legend. Okay, so this Morgase has been treated negatively. Like Clytemnestra, she is killed by one of her own sons who finds her guilty of adultery. So this is the story of Morgase. She is often depicted as a sorceress, than magician. And in some of the 20th century novel version of the Arthurian materials, she epitomizes evil. So Morgase epitomizes evil. That means she has been treated negatively. She is the queen of Eyre and darkness. That is Morgase. However, T.W. White's The Once and the Future King, a beautiful witch in contact with the powers of the dark in Ghislaine Barshaw's Down the Long Wind trilogy. So not only in such a way that Morgase has been treated negatively by W.A. White's The Once and the Future King, and also Ghislaine Barshaw's Down the Long Wind. They have been treated negatively. Nimue is also a sorceress. Sorceress, that means magician. Like Morgase scheme to bring about the downfall of the forces of the goddess, Nimue causes Merlin, Arthur's faithful magician, to fall in love with her. We have, and when she has she has extracted from him secret of his magic. She uses that magic to imprison him. Tennyson, who calls her Vivian, described her as a kind of snake woman. So this Nimue has been treated as the, we have seen the picture of this here, okay, lake of lady, okay. So Tennyson has called Nimue as a snake woman. Sorry. And who seals the old man in a hollow tree forever, lost to life and use and name of him. And Isuelt and Guinevere come into the different category, that of unfaithful wives. So these are the female characters, snake women in such a way. But Isuelt and Guinevere, they had been created unfaithful wives, who are nevertheless faithful lovers until death. So Guinevere and Isolant's position. The treatment of Isolant has tended to be more constant, perhaps because of the history of the inadvertent beginnings of the love between Isolant and Christian, when they mistakenly drink the love potion intended for the new husband, creates an image of Isolant, an innocent victim of passion. The treatment of the story of Guinevere, however, has been much more varied. Shifts in sympathy towards her own part of the different writers can arguably be said to reflect shifts in attitude towards the figure of a woman who seeks to determine her own destiny. So Guinevere character has been treated in a multifarious ways. Some writer and some critic put Guinevere is a very determined woman who is very much confirmed to determine her own fate, because the story will give you the idea the how she was. It has been suggested, and also more strongly in the case of Guinevere, that the Romans are dealing with tradition of Celtic queenship that in the Middle Age are no longer comprehensible. A Celtic queen was her husband's equal. So Celtic, you know, that the early history of Britain related to the Celtic. So the Celt people and the language, Celtic language, is the Aboriginal language, English language used in UK. So the Celtic history of women tradition or women archetype means that queen will be equal to king. That is their similar attitude of Celtic tradition. So Guinevere's position was equal to the tradition of Celtic women archetype here, and could take lover as a king, could take concubines. And as the king can take concubines, queen can also take concubines. Transplanted into the context of medieval wifely duty, the story becomes different and the Isolent becomes theoretically bad. But in that perspective, Isolent and Guinevere, they have become bad by practicing. So the nation is that if king can take concubine, whether queen cannot take concubine. Lancelot, Guinevere developed a relation with Lancelot, and Isolde developed a relationship with Tristan in the legend of Tristan and Isolde. So how they are not justified in perspectives, because the tradition, the Celtic tradition suggests that queens are equal to kings. So this is the scenario. The importance of the mother goddess in the Irish culture is reflected in the song Energym. So it is the mother goddess. This is the Irish tradition. I am the omb of every bolt. I am the blaze of every hill. I am the queen of every hive. I am the shield of every head. I am the tomb of every hope. So the mother goddess. So women played a very protective and shelter position in Irish culture. That means women is a name of shelter, women is a name of protection, women is a name of some massive idea in Irish culture. The mother goddess or the triple goddess representing the cycle of birth, um, mother and death, the three manifestation of maiden, mother and the hag, the three symbolic archetypes recur throughout the story. So the Trinity, the Christian idea of Trinity, that means mother and the idea. Here, Arthurian stories as different characters. But from the Celtic tradition, we see a different tradition in Arthurian characters. But with the transformation of new into the new literary forms of pre-Christian oral tradition, the power of the goddess has been significantly altered. Successive feminist studies of early matriarchal societies have shown how the shift to patriarchy was characterized by a radical change into the depiction of the female deities. So whenever the patriarchal society will be presenting female character, male-dominated writers or the male-dominated society will be presenting female character, they can shift the idea of female deities. Female deities idea has been shifted by some other alternatives. So from all powerful goddess who control the passage into the world and out of it, we end up with a series of wicked witches. That means female characters has been attributed to witches and debauched queens, unstable wives, cruel lovers. So this is the scenario of, and the Judeo-Christian conception of women as being responsible for the fall of Adam and of mankind. So these are the position of women in literature. Here, Condren points out the great mother was marginalized. The Mary, she has motherhood was no longer a source of strength and a handicap, preventing one sex from participating or representing in the prestigious culture of the warriors. So why female cannot fight? Because they give birth children. And for such kind of physiological position, women cannot fight. But this participation is represented, this idea. That means if female couldn't give birth children, the generation will not be flourished. But this idea of giving birth of children is a handicap to the female archetype. They said that female give birth child, and for this reason they cannot take part in war and in fighting. So this is the represented as religion, as represented by the serpent and goddesses in the form of triple spiral, could be obvious, overcome and replaced eventually by the sign of the cross. The Irish story has presented for us the true nature of the event, the matricide, and lies at the heart of the patriarchal culture and the fall into the patriarchal time and space that would have devastating consequence for the banished children of Eve. So these are the position women has got in literature for the idea of patriarchal or male-dominated writing in literature. And already we have talked about Greek mythology, which charts another version of the transition of the matriarchy to patriarchy, the destruction of the mother of a prominent motive. Clytemnestra and Morges are depicted as the dishonorable and dishonoring, and hence are killed by their own sons. So Clytemnestra, when Clytemnestra killed Agamemnon, Clytemnestra herself was killed by her own son, and Morges had the same fate. So that has been justified in such a way that they are the dishonorable women, and for this reason justice requires, that means they had been killed by their own sons. This is the Greek mythology's justification. And Arthur embodies all the virtues of military powers, combined with great good judgment. In case of Guinevere, Arthur, Mortidy Arthur, that means King Arthur, put Guinevere combined with good judgment, nobility and honesty. In case of, except for one fatal flaw, follow his wife Guinevere. So King Arthur was a good king, noble, but one fatal follow of King Arthur had, that is his wife Guinevere. So wife being a very noble queen of Arthurian legend, Guinevere was taken as a flaw of King Arthur. Geoffrey of Monmouth, the History of the Kings of the Britain, contains an account of Arthur's betrayal by Guinevere. So we see some kind of attitude by several writers of that time. Geoffrey's version, she is described as having broken her marriage vows to live in adultery with Mordred. So Geoffrey's version. Also, in the version, Arthur's nephew, who had been left in charge to the kingdom while Arthur was absent fighting the Romans. Arthur returns and Mordred is defeated and Guinevere flees for her life to convent. So at that time, when Arthur returns, Guinevere left the house and she went to a convent house. Arthur pursues Mordred and finally kills him before he is himself mortally wounded. He is taken to the Isles of Elabon and hands over him the crown to his cousin Constantine, son of the Duke of Cornwall, the date according to the Geoffrey. So Geoffrey's version of Arthurian legend is in a different way. Okay, so the basic ingredients of the Arthur as an ideal ruler, but handicapped by an unfaithful wife. That unfaithful wife, that is Guinevere, either by Geoffrey's version or Sir Arthur Mallory's version. In both versions, we see that King Arthur is a good king of British. However, he has been handicapped by his wife Guinevere. Charlotte depicts Lancelot in classic courtly mood as the true and the faithful servant of his liege lady. Guinevere, who risks pain and humiliation to save her when she is abducted by the evil Melgaunt. He also presents a sympathetic portrait of Arthur, who is never depicted as a cuckold husband and always as the epitome of the nobility and generosity. The tension present in this dual presentive creates spilled sympathies for reader. So we see such kind of explanation in literature. So it is noticeable that Christian D. Pigeon doesn't include Guinevere in her book in the City of the Ideas. So in this regard, a book that is written by Pigeon, in this book he didn't mention Guinevere in his book, and we see such kind of attitude towards Arthurian region. So these are the the theme of Guinevere's adultery takes on an altogether more sinister and important dimension, and she becomes the scapegoat and the symbol of disintegration in the ideal male order of the round table. So by all writings, we see Guinevere has been presented as the scapegoat and the who violated the round table, that means knightship in Arthurian legend. Guinevere is thus a dangerous emotive force in many of the romances, becomes the symbol of disunity and disintegration, like if Guinevere is held responsible for the fall of man. So this is about Guinevere. He is making love to his true lady, Guinevere. The passion between Lancelot and Guinevere is presented in matter of fact terms at the beginning of the book 4. Here we see this version has been presented by some other writers. Mallory's Guinevere is an active character, Sir Arthur Mallory's, and imperiously ordering Elaine to leave Lancelot alone in a scene of rivalry that has become a staple of contemporary soap opera, and sending the errant and Sir Pendiver on the pilgrims to Rome to seek penance for having beheaded his wife when she had placed herself under Lancelot protection. So Mallory's Guinevere, Mallory put Guinevere as an active character. So this also the description of Mallory's Guinevere. W.T.H. White develops the character of Arthur outlines by Mallory, offering us the portrait of a good man caught in the tragic reality of his wife's love for his best friend. Arthur was caught in a dilemma. In one hand, Arthur loves his wife Guinevere very much, and at the same time, his wife falls in love with his best friend and knight, that is Lancelot. So, with this scenario, while depicts Arthur's dimming through a banal conversation charged with the hidden meanings, Lancelot began to laugh, and the last strand of the tension seems to have broken. Would you, he asked, marry a woman who chased you with a hatchet? So this was the question. The king considered the matter gravely before he answered. I couldn't do that, he said in the end, because I am married already. So this is the situation that Arthur was caught in a dilemma. In one side, he had his wife, and in another side, he had his close friend and best knight, Lancelot. So this is the situation moves on in such a way, and in his book entitled Learning to Curse, Essay in Early Modern Culture, Stephen Glinberg discusses the basic premises of New Historicist criticism. The New Historicism, he suggests, involves looking at literary texts in such a way as to recover as far as possible the historical circumstances of their original production and reception. So this is when this is the position of literature, especially the named personage, New Historicism comes in our hand. And New Historicism discusses the history relating to the original, the initial production of the text. That is that came into the discussion. That is related to thematology of post-colonial, comparative literature. And again, Archism complained about the immorality of the stories of Arthur and his knights reflects a common concern of liberal humanism. Here, another idea comes in our hand, that is, for the stable marriage mirror the stability of the state. Catherine Bensley notes that early in the 16th century, the circulation of the humanist discourses in English produced a new definition of good government in the state of in the family. The humanist subject was to be persuaded rather than coerced, and a sound and persuasive education was probably enough to guarantee a national and virtual adult. So New Historicism, and then some writer saw it as an idea of liberal humanism. And two texts in particular deserve consideration as example of the tension created by the patterns of consideration in how the arthurial material is handled. Tennyson's Idylls of the King and the William Morris The Defense of Guinevere. And here we see Melodies Motti had been published again in 1816 and 1817 and was widely available. Tennyson bases much of his work on melody, but with significant difference. His Arthur is an ideal figure, but devoted to sensuality. The first book, entitled The Coming of Arthur, opens the four lines, describe the beauty of the Guinevere. She was the fairest of all flesh on earth. So Guinevere was very beautiful, and her father passionate love for her daughters. So this is the praise. We see, we will not read this. What makes Tennyson's portrayal of Guinevere so interesting are the tension within it. She loves and is punished for that love. But the terms in which her love for Lancelot are described really on words such as error, sin, or shame. So this is the idea regarding Guinevere's love to Lancelot. So again and again, such kind of explanation are coming in our hand. I want to read another thing. So here, William Morris and his fellow pre-revalitists seem to have been fascinated by the idea of women who transgress. Although they depicted idealized images of women in their writing and their art, they also created a range of female fatals, that is Guinevere, Lilith, Helen of Troy, and the figures of Greek mythology such as Circe. Women are presented as powerful but dangerous. So we see this is the position that women has presented powerful, but they are dangerous. And the danger derives from their sensuality. Why they are dangerous? Because of their sensuality. Rossetti, more than Morris, portrayed prostitute and fallen women, and they have Victorian terminology, stand in contrast to the ideal image of women as an angelic figure. In case of Victorian, we see angelic figure of women. Morris' poem is a good example of the ambiguity of the Victorian male attitude to women who seek out their own happiness. And for though on the one hand, Guinevere is shown as strong-willed and determined to rebut the charges against her. That means Guinevere refuted the charges against her. And on her womanliness presented in physical terms, and ultimately she does not succeed and has to be rescued. Her arguments are all emotional, and her physical expression of that emotion is highlighted throughout. So Guinevere put some argument in favor of her, but that argument was put as emotional argument. What can be gained from looking at text across wide time span that deal with the same basic material? So from this discussion, what can be the position of literature that can judge this named personage of literature? This question has concerned generation of comparatists. So this question come to the mind of the comparatist. The crux of the debate between comparative study as a literary history or a practical comparing of text, regardless of context, can be seen in different attitude of tracing the thematic matrices across the culture and temporal boundaries. So in this regard, idea that is uh, a text should be considered beyond historical and cultural boundaries. And in this regard, Coleb and Knox imply that thematic studies, that is thematology of comparative literature. Nothing similarities between unrelated text is good pedagogic practice in the classroom and helps break down prejudices about the uniqueness of literary system, and the comparison of one text with another without contextual reference is a formalist exercise that rapidly became tedious. So that is the idea that uh, Koleb and Noack simply put, that a text should be just crossing the cultural and historical boundaries. That is very much formalistic attitude suggested by the French school of comparative literature. We are nearly the end of this class. So we dominant ideas of feminine behavior conditioned reader response theory. Hence, Tennyson confirms the parameters of Victorian readers um, as Joss puts it, the reconstruction of the horizon of expectation on the basis of which a work in the past was created and received enables us to find the question which is the text originally answered, and thereby to discover how the reader. So when such is the scenario, another theory came in our hand, that is reader response theory. That means how a literary text can be received by the readers. This approach corrects the usually unrecognized values of a classical conception of art, or of an interpretation that seeks to modernize, and it avoids the recourse of the general spirit of the age. So reader response theory, that is how reader will accept a text, and it will overcome the mm, text relation with some culture or some uh, history. Yeah. And thereby challenges as Platonizing dogma, the apparently self-evident dictum of philolo- uh, philological metaphysics, and literature is timelessly present, and that it has objective meaning. So reader response theory also suggests that literature can be a product of any time. So there is no time might be attributed to literature, and determined once and for all and directly open to the interpreter at any time. So how the reader will accept the text, that is very much related to the thematology of comparative literature. So we have got, that is the idea of reader response theory. Reader response theory, like new historicism, works on our recognizing the dialectical relationship between a text and as a product of a particular age, and the text as received in another context. So literature, how it will be accepted by the other context. Joss is explicitly opposed to what he calls the Platonizing dogma, Platonizing dogma of the universal objective meaning of a text. So, a meaning of a text can never be objective. It can be perceived in different way by different readers, by readers of different culture, and that is the challenge to the Platonizing or the ideal or the objective theme of a literature. That means a literature, theme of a literature can be viewed in several perspectives by several readers, by several critics, in several time, in several cultural, in several cultural set. That is a challenge to the Platonizing ideals of literature. So this is the convention of the romantic novel, which underlines Ghislaine Bernshaw's statement of the story, requires women to find happiness and fulfillment with a relationship with a man. Her Guinevere, though the narrator of the book is a passive, helpless character, remarkably unaware of her own powers and still unaware of the by the end, and she remarks almost is in surprise that she has begun speaking like a abyss weighed down by guilt. Brandshaw's Guinevere is an example of an archetypal romantic heroine on whom fate acts, and for she is not in control at any stage of her life or destiny. That such a novel could have been produced and been successful despite 2 decades of the feminist throughout. Uh, writing is Writing is evidence of the continued power of traditional images of subordinate femininity within the convention of a particular literary type. So this is the position of Guinevere in literature. So again, we can see that the position of women in literature can be viewed in several ways by several writers of several times. And however, women should be judged based on the observation, that is from the formalistic approach. That means what does the text say, and also the literature can be viewed by reader response theory. That is how a literature can be viewed by readers of different cultural set and different time set. So this is all for today's class. Thank you very much for attending the class.